The heart monitor beeped steadily. It was as cold as a countdown clock. In this hospital room, thick with the smell of disinfectant, I could also smell the scent of farewell. A crushing grief hung over everything. Dr. Thornton looked at me with sympathetic eyes. He sighed, and then delivered a heartbreaking sentence. Your liver has completely failed. I'm afraid you only have 5 days left to live. 5 days. My brain froze. My ears rang. But right beside me another voice spoke up. It held no shock. It was filled with triumph. My son stepped forward. He grabbed my frail hand tightly. He leaned down close to my ear. At last, in just 5 more days, the entire $75 million will belong to me. Welcome back to Dad's real-life revenge. Grab a drink, some snacks, get comfortable, and remember the people in these stories had every opportunity to do the right thing, they simply chose not to. Leave a comment with the number 1 so we can continue the story, and hit subscribe, you're going to enjoy this one. I glared at Vincent, the only son I had ever loved more than my own life. There was a smile on his face. A smile shattered like glass. Sharp and cold. That smile never reached his eyes. At that moment his eyes looked like a vulture circling in the sky. He was waiting for his prey to die so he could pick over the remains. The graveyard of greed was clearly visible within his soul. Did you hear me, Dad? Vincent whispered. His voice trembled with excitement. Just 5 more days. Then I won't have to hold out my hand and ask you for money anymore. That enormous fortune will change owners. You've lived too long already. It's time to hand the spotlight over to your son. Every word was like a knife stabbing straight into my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slap that disgusting face. But my body would not obey. I lay there helplessly. My entire body trembled. My chest tightened with overwhelming outrage. The child I had raised for 30 years had turned out to be a demon wearing a human face. He was counting every day, every hour, waiting to send his own father to the grave. 5 days. The clock of fate began to tick. I stared at the stark white ceiling. Hatred surged within me. In this fight for survival, I could not lose in such a humiliating way. Night fell over the hospital. The building sank into a deadly silence. I lay motionless in the darkness. The heart monitor continued its steady beeping, but inside my mind, fragments of memory began to shatter and return. 3 months, only 3 months, and my life had been turned completely upside down. I remembered the afternoon spent sitting in the living room. That was when my body first began showing signs of deterioration. Natalie, my daughter-in-law. She always appeared with a saintly expression. In her hands was always a steaming cup of herbal tea. Dad, this tea is very good for your health. You need to drink it while it's still warm. Her voice was as sweet as honey. I had smiled. I had been touched by that fake devotion. I accepted the cup and drank it without the slightest suspicion. With my own hands I drank poison disguised as family affection. Then came the horrifying days that followed. The weakness arrived gradually, but with merciless cruelty. At first it was only mild headaches. Then came prolonged bouts of dry vomiting. I lost weight at an alarming rate. My skin turned gray and lifeless. Naively, I thought it was simply the destruction brought on by old age. I believed that no one could escape the cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death. What I did not know was that I was already lying in a graveyard of greed that my own son and daughter-in-law had prepared for me. The two of them performed their roles perfectly. Vincent worriedly called doctors. Natalie stayed by my bedside, changing warm towels for me. Whenever I became exhausted and wanted to give up, they were there, encouraging me. Dad, you have to stay strong. We can't live without you. How disgusting that devotion was. Behind those crocodile tears lay careful calculations measured day by day. They were counting down the time it would take for my liver to be destroyed. Looking back now, I finally understood why their eyes lit up whenever I vomited. I finally understood why Natalie always pressured me to finish every drop of that herbal tea each night. She wanted to make sure not a single drop of the deadly liquid went to waste. They had planned this for a very long time. A murder plot without a knife. A murder plot designed to leave no trace. I clenched the bedsheet tightly. My fingernails dug deep into the fabric. This betrayal was more than a father could bear. I had given them everything. Money, status, love. But for vultures, nothing is ever enough. They wanted my life as well. They wanted the $75 million immediately. Suddenly, soft footsteps echoed through the hallway. The lock on the hospital room door shifted quietly. A dark figure slipped into the room. Vincent had returned. But this time he was not alone. In his hand was a syringe filled with a clear liquid. He moved closer to my bed with a chilling smile. The appointed hour had arrived. The hospital room door clicked shut, locked from the inside. The room was instantly cut off from the outside world. Vincent walked toward my bed. He was no longer pretending to be concerned. His face openly displayed the triumph of a predator that had finally cornered its prey. He stood over me. The faint glow of the streetlights filtered through the window, casting his shadow across the wall. At that moment he looked exactly like a demon. He raised the syringe. The clear liquid inside shifted gently. He looked at me with mocking eyes. "Still awake, Dad, good. I want you fully conscious to hear this." His voice lowered, cold and sharp. "Do you know what this is, levorphanol? An extremely powerful, addictive painkiller. For the past 3 months, Natalie has been mixing it into your tea in gradually increasing doses." My eyes widened. I tried to move, but my entire body felt numb. My throat tightened bitterly, and only broken, muffled sounds escaped my lips. Vincent laughed out loud. The harsh sound was revolting. "Don't waste your energy, Dad. Your body has absorbed far too much poison already. The doctors told you that you have end-stage liver failure, right? Wrong. This is what has been destroying your liver cells day after day. You're too weak to fight back. Too old to recognize the truth. You trusted us blindly, and that was the greatest mistake of your life." He sat down in the chair beside my bed. Then he began to dream aloud, his voice dripping with greed. 5 more days. Just 5 more days. When your heart stops beating, I'll finally be free. I'll use your $75 million to buy a luxurious villa in Bora Bora. I'll lie on the beach watching the sunset and drinking the most expensive champagne money can buy. I'll never have to listen to your lectures again. I'll be my own boss. I lay there. Hatred surged to its peak. The outrage and bitterness made my chest feel as though it might explode. The son I had once been proud of, the son to whom I had given every opportunity to do the right thing, was now counting down the days until my death so he could indulge himself. He was convinced he had won. He believed that his plan with Natalie was flawless. Vincent stood up. Slowly, he pushed the syringe plunger. A droplet of liquid appeared at the tip of the needle. He leaned close to my face. His breath reeked of cruelty. "It's going to be a long night, dear Dad. Enjoy these final days." He turned, walked to the door, unlocked it, and disappeared into the darkness of the hallway. The hospital room returned to its terrifying silence. The heart monitor continued its steady beeping like a death sentence being read aloud. I stared into the empty space before me. Tears ran down my face, not from fear but from contempt. Vincent had become too arrogant. He believed I was completely helpless. He had no idea that in a fight for survival, the hunter sometimes turns out to be the prey. The soft footsteps of Nurse Jennifer echoed outside the room. She was carrying something that could overturn the entire game. The hospital room door opened quietly. Nurse Jennifer stepped inside. Her eyes swept quickly around the room, making sure no one else was present besides me. She approached the bed, her face marked by unmistakable seriousness. In her hand was a carefully sealed white envelope. The logo of the Boulder Laboratory stood out prominently in the upper left corner. Jennifer leaned down and whispered into my ear, "Mr. Hayes, your toxicology results are back. I did exactly as you instructed. No one knows about this." I gave a slight nod. Jennifer helped me open the envelope. She lifted the report and began reading it aloud. Each word, each number, struck like thunder in my ears. The concentration of levorphanol in the bloodstream is 4 times higher than the permitted level. This is evidence of systematic poisoning. The indicators of liver failure are entirely consistent with the effects of prolonged exposure to high doses of this substance. The ice inside me melted instantly. In its place came a frightening sense of cold determination. My voice was no longer weak or shocked as it had been in recent days. The instincts of a man who had fought through decades in business to build a fortune of $75 million had awakened. Vincent and Natalie thought I was a confused old man. They thought I could do nothing but lie there and wait to die. But they were wrong. 2 weeks earlier I had secretly collected a blood sample and asked Jennifer to send it to Boulder. My survival instinct had saved my life. This envelope was my insurance policy written in blood. It was the ticket that would drag two criminals into the light. The 5-day countdown was no longer a death sentence for me. It had become a countdown to the end of Vincent and Natalie's freedom. I looked at Jennifer. My eyes burned with unwavering resolve. I asked her to keep the documents safe. The counterattack had officially begun. I lay silently in the hospital bed, my chest rising and falling with each breath. The frustration and bitterness that had consumed me for months had transformed into a ruthless plan for retaliation. I would show them the true cost of betrayal. I would not die. The ones who would pay the price were my ungrateful son and my vicious daughter-in-law. I reached beneath my pillow and pulled out the secret phone hidden there. I dialed a familiar number. The call was answered almost immediately. A middle-aged man's voice came through the line, deep, steady, and authoritative. I spoke into the phone, my voice as cold as frozen steel. "Henry, come to the hospital immediately. Bring everything necessary for overturning a will. I have less than 5 days left. Henry Morrison, my personal attorney, my closest friend, a legal warrior who had never lost a battle." I heard him draw a deep breath on the other end of the line. He knew me well. When I gave an order in that tone, it meant a bloody war was about to begin. I ended the call. Tonight Vincent was probably sleeping peacefully in his mansion. He was likely dreaming of the beaches of Bora Bora and $75 million. He had no idea that the trap he had built with his own hands was beginning to reverse itself and tighten around his own throat. Rapid footsteps echoed down the hallway once again. But this time it was not Vincent. A tall figure stepped into the hospital room carrying a thick black leather briefcase. The legal battle had officially begun. The hospital room door swung open. Henry Morrison stepped inside. The bearing of a legal warrior showed in every decisive step he took. His black overcoat still carried traces of the night mist. He set a thick leather briefcase on the table. Concern flashed across his face as he looked at me, but it quickly hardened into seriousness when he saw the Boulder Laboratory report in my hand. I slid the document toward him. There was no trace of weakness left in my voice. "Read it, Henry. My son is trying to kill me." Henry picked up the report. His eyebrows drew together. His eyes widened when he saw the word levorphanol and the notation showing a concentration 4 times above the permitted level. Silence settled over the hospital room. Henry drew a deep breath. His face hardened. Looking directly into my eyes, he spoke in a low but powerful voice. "Charles, this is a horrifying crime. They want to take your life to seize your fortune. We need to call the police immediately." I raised a hand to stop him. My gaze was as cold as forged steel. "No, Henry. If we call the police now, they'll find a way to explain it away. They'll blame medical error or come up with some other excuse. I want a fatal blow. I want them to watch the fortune they crave disappear right before their eyes while they can do nothing about it. I want their triumph to turn into absolute despair." Henry nodded. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. "I understand. Then what do we do?" I looked up at the ceiling. Every word carried authority and determination. "Draft a new will. An ironclad will. A will made of steel. I am disinheriting Vincent completely. Not a single cent will go to him. The entire $75 million will be donated to Denver Children's Hospital. My money will be used to save children's lives instead of feeding those 2 greedy vultures." Henry looked at me with a mixture of respect and astonishment. The decision to donate my entire fortune was a move no one could have predicted. It would destroy every hope Vincent had. But Henry also reminded me of the pressure of time. "We have less than 5 days left, Charles. Vincent has probably already prepared documents claiming you're not mentally competent. If something happens to you, he'll try to invalidate any new will. We need a process that is flawless and impossible to break." I smiled. A smile as cold as ice. "I know. That's why we're going to build a legal fortress right here in this hospital room." Henry began turning page after page. His pen moved swiftly across the documents. The draft of the new will began to take shape. Every clause was carefully considered to provide the strongest possible legal protection. Time passed. The hands of the clock crept steadily toward dawn. The pressure of those 5 remaining days weighed heavily upon us. This was no longer just a matter of dividing property. It was a battle to reclaim the justice and dignity of a betrayed father. Henry finally looked up. His eyes shone with determination. "Everything is ready for the next step." But if this will is truly going to become an unbeatable weapon, we'll need some very special witnesses. Henry glanced toward the window where the first light of dawn was beginning to appear. Then he spoke quietly. I've already contacted them. They're on their way. The morning of the second day of the countdown arrived. Hospital room 402 had been transformed into a miniature law office. An atmosphere of formality and cold determination filled the room. Henry Morrison had prepared everything perfectly. At exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, 3 people entered. A county notary, a leading psychiatrist from the University of Colorado, and a professional videographer. They had come to build a legal fortress, an ironclad process that could not be broken. The psychiatrist approached my bed. He began evaluating my mental competency. He asked a series of questions about time, place, and complex calculations. I answered every one of them slowly, clearly, and accurately. Every response demonstrated complete mental clarity. The videographer adjusted the camera lens. The camera would record the entire process from beginning to end. It would serve as steel-solid evidence against any future dispute. Henry opened the new will. His voice rang through the silent room. I, Charles Hayes, being of sound mind and fully competent, hereby disinherit Vincent Hayes. All assets, including real estate, stocks, and $75 million in cash, shall be transferred directly to the charitable fund of Denver Children's Hospital. Henry handed me a fountain pen. My hand trembled from the effects of the levorphanol that still lingered in my bloodstream, but my will was as hard as a general marching into battle. I gathered every ounce of strength I had left. I lowered the pen. Each stroke of my signature felt like a bullet fired directly into Vincent and Natalie's scheme. I signed my name on 3 copies. The notary pressed a bright red seal onto the documents. The sharp click of the stamp echoed triumphantly through the room. The security process was complete. The ironclad will had been successfully established. Now, even if I closed my eyes forever within those 5 days, Vincent would never touch a single cent of my fortune. The graveyard of greed they had dug would become the burial ground of their Bora Bora dream. For the first time in months, some of the bitterness inside me began to fade. I looked at Henry and gave him a grateful nod. But the battle was only halfway finished. The new will was merely a shield protecting my wealth. I wanted more than that. I did not simply want to save my money. I wanted the 2 criminals to answer for attempted murder. I wanted them in handcuffs. Henry gathered the documents and returned them to his briefcase. Then he leaned closer and spoke quietly. My part is finished. Now, it's time for the night hunter. The moment Henry finished speaking, the hospital room door opened once again. A man wearing a leather jacket stepped inside. His face was sharply defined. His eyes were as keen as a hawk's. It was Marcus Coleman, the most notorious private investigator in the city. Marcus smiled. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a black flash drive. Looking directly at me, he spoke. I found what you needed. He held up the drive. The trap is ready to close around your son's neck. Marcus Coleman inserted the flash drive into Henry's laptop. The screen flickered to life. Blue-white light reflected across the private investigator's sharp features. Marcus's fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard. A sense of mounting suspense spread through the room. He looked at me with eyes as sharp as a hawk's. Mr. Hayes, the hunt in the shadows is complete. I've turned over every stone around your son during the last 48 hours. And this is what I found. The screen displayed black and white security footage. The camera angle looked down from above onto a deserted parking lot behind the hospital. The timestamp showed 11 o'clock at night 3 days earlier. A familiar black luxury car entered the frame. It was Vincent's car. The driver's door opened. Vincent stepped out, his designer coat fluttering lightly in the night breeze. He leaned against the hood and repeatedly checked his watch with obvious impatience. A few minutes later, a woman approached. She was wearing the blue uniform of a hospital employee. Marcus paused the footage and zoomed in on her face. He turned toward me. This is Victoria Cross. She's the laboratory technician responsible for handling your samples and processing your medication records. The video resumed. Vincent pulled a thick envelope from his coat pocket. He handed it to Victoria. She opened it slightly. Her eyes lit up with greed at the sight of the stacks of cash inside. In exchange, Victoria handed Vincent a small medication box. Marcus continued his explanation. That box contained high-dose levorphanol taken from the pharmacy inventory. Victoria also switched your blood test samples inside the hospital to conceal the toxic levels. That's how the poisoning operation was carried out. As I watched the footage, my blood seemed to boil. The betrayal was laid bare before my eyes. The son I had raised was standing in a dark parking lot, purchasing the substance that was slowly killing his father. The bitterness inside me surged so fiercely that it nearly took my breath away. But I did not cry. I refused to allow myself that weakness. Instead, I stared coldly at the screen. I memorized every face, every gesture, every expression of triumph. The price of this graveyard of greed would be enormous. If you've stayed with the story this far, then it has probably stirred some emotions in you. Please help us with one small favor that takes only a moment. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment with the number 5 so I know you've made it this far, and tell me your prediction for the ending to see whether you're right. Many people watch without doing so, but it costs you nothing and means a great deal to us. Our legal trap was complete. Now Marcus's criminal case was beginning to close. We had obtained solid evidence of a conspiracy to commit murder. Vincent believed he had bought everyone's silence. He believed my money could conceal every crime. He did not understand that greed always leaves a trail. Marcus Coleman closed the laptop. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. The cold focus of a hunter preparing for the final strike appeared in his eyes. He spoke into the phone with firm authority. My team has surrounded Victoria Cross's residence. The operation to make her identify the person behind this starts now. I lay in the hospital bed counting the beats of the clock of fate. The third day of the countdown was nearing its end. My life was still in danger, but the balance of power had completely shifted. Victoria Cross now faced a choice that could determine the rest of her life. Would she remain loyal to Vincent and risk going to prison with him, or would she speak the truth to save herself? The night of the third day of the countdown arrived. The trap finally snapped shut on the perpetrators. Detective Marcus Coleman sent Henry a live audio recording from a private interrogation room. I put on the headphones. The sounds of ragged breathing and muffled sobbing came through with perfect clarity. Victoria Cross had completely fallen apart under the weight of the surveillance footage Marcus had presented. Her trembling voice echoed through the recording. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to kill anyone. Vincent Hayes came to me first. He paid me $20,000 in cash every month. My job was simply to replace ordinary pain medication with high-dose levorphanol. He assured me that the old man was already weak and would die naturally from liver failure. I was just someone taking money for a job." Marcus Coleman pressed forward with cold precision. "Who supplied the medication? A hospital pharmacy doesn't lose that much levorphanol without someone noticing." Victoria broke down completely. Hoping for leniency, she began revealing the entire operation. "Margaret Foster. She's the head pharmacist. Natalie, Vincent's wife, is her close friend. They worked together to move the medication out of the pharmacy. Natalie kept records and monitored the daily dosages to make sure the old man didn't die too quickly and attract suspicion." As I listened to the confession, my chest tightened. A deep sense of satisfaction mixed with overwhelming bitterness. The guilty had begun turning on one another to save themselves. Their loyalty, built entirely on money, shattered the moment they faced the possibility of handcuffs. Vincent and Natalie had believed they had created a perfect alliance. They thought greed could bind people together, but they forgot a simple truth. Those who unite for profit will gladly trample each other when the ship begins to sink. The entire poisoning conspiracy now stood exposed. My ungrateful son, my ruthless daughter-in-law, the laboratory technician, the chief pharmacist. Together, they had built a graveyard of greed intended to bury me. What they never anticipated was that I would construct a legal and criminal fortress powerful enough to crush them all. I removed the headphones and looked at Henry Morrison. My eyes burned with the authority of a judge delivering a sentence. The 5-day countdown had entered its 4th day. Every piece of solid evidence was now in our possession. Victoria's confession, the Boulder Laboratory report, the parking lot video, more than enough to send them to prison. Henry rose to his feet and fastened the button of his black overcoat. He checked his watch before turning toward me with a grim smile. "Charles, the dawn of the 4th day will be Judgment Day. I've already delivered the entire case file to the county sheriff. The Major Crimes Unit is preparing emergency arrest warrants." I lay quietly in the darkness and closed my eyes. For the first time in months, a feeling of satisfaction spread through me. At that very moment, Vincent was probably still dreaming about his wealthy future. He had no idea that in only a few hours, police sirens would tear that dream apart. Then, a loud crash suddenly echoed through the hospital corridor. Rapid footsteps thundered outside the room. A familiar voice was shouting. Vincent had discovered something, and he was racing straight toward my hospital room. The door to room 402 burst open. Vincent charged into the room like a cornered animal. His face was pale. His eyes were streaked with blood-red veins. In his hand was a copy of the notice he had just received from Henry Morrison's law office. A notice informing him that he had been disinherited. He was furious. He stormed toward my bed, screaming like a man who had completely lost control. "What have you done?" Vincent shouted. His voice was hoarse with rage. "Why would you donate the entire $75 million to a children's hospital? I'm your only son. You can't do this to me. That money is mine. It belongs to me. You're a crazy old man." I remained still in the hospital bed. I looked at the son standing before me with eyes as cold as ice. A quiet authority filled the room. I was no longer the helpless old man waiting to die. I met his gaze and spoke slowly. Each word carried the weight of 1,000 pounds. "That fortune belongs to me. I have every right to give it to children who deserve it rather than to a man who tried to kill his own father." Vincent froze. Terror twisted his face. He stumbled backward. "How do you know?" "No. What are you talking about?" I smiled, a smile filled with contempt. At that moment, Henry Morrison stepped out from a shadowed corner of the room. In his hands was the evidence file assembled by Marcus Coleman. "There is no way out now," Vincent Henry said. His voice carried the finality of a courtroom verdict. "We have the blood test results from the Boulder laboratory. We have the surveillance footage of you handing money to Victoria Cross in the parking lot. And most importantly, Victoria has signed a full confession. She has identified everyone involved in the poisoning scheme carried out by you and Natalie. Chief Pharmacist Margaret Foster has also been arrested." Vincent collapsed onto the floor. His entire body trembled uncontrollably. Every trace of arrogance and triumph vanished. He stared at the file in Henry's hands with complete despair. The graveyard of greed he had dug with his own hands was now burying his own life. The hospital room door opened once more. This time, the county sheriff entered alongside 4 armed officers. Their faces were grim. One officer approached Vincent and removed a pair of steel handcuffs. "Vincent Hayes, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say from this point forward may be used as evidence in court." The sharp click of the handcuffs locking around Vincent's wrists echoed through the room. It was one of the most satisfying sounds I had ever heard. Vincent broke down. He grabbed desperately at the side of my bed. "Dad, I was wrong. Please help me. I'm your son. Please withdraw the complaint." I turned my face away. I did not even look at him. The forgiveness of a father had been killed by his own actions 3 months earlier. The officers pulled Vincent away. His desperate cries echoed down the hallway, growing fainter and fainter, until they disappeared completely. Henry looked at me and pressed a button on his phone, bringing up a live video feed from the sheriff. At our luxurious mansion, Natalie was also being escorted to a police car. She was crying hysterically in an expensive designer dress. In the hands of another officer was her journal of crimes. The journal contained detailed records of the levorphanol dosages she had mixed into my tea each day. The meticulous calculations she had made now served as the strongest evidence against her. This explosive and fitting act of justice washed away all the frustration, bitterness, and resentment that had built up inside me over the previous 3 months. The criminals had been placed in handcuffs. Justice had been carried out with ruthless precision. The 4th day of the countdown ended in my complete victory. I remained in my hospital bed. The heart monitor continued its steady beeping. But this time, my heartbeat felt strangely peaceful. My health began showing remarkable signs of improvement as soon as I stopped drinking Natalie's poisoned tea. 3 months after the day of judgment, the final trial officially came to an end. Vincent received a sentence of 25 years in prison. Natalie received 20 years for her role in the murder conspiracy. Standing before the court, their faces were gray and defeated. None of the arrogance they once carried remained. The graveyard of greed had finally swallowed the lives of the 2 traitors. My body underwent a remarkable recovery. Once the lavorphenol-laced tea had completely disappeared from my life, my liver cells began to regenerate. The doctors at the hospital called it a medical miracle. But I knew the truth. It was my determination to survive, and my desire for justice that pulled me back from the brink of death. I was no longer the frail old man waiting to die in a hospital room filled with the scent of farewell. My voice now carried the peace and authority of a man who had prevailed. Today was a special day. The dedication ceremony for the new pediatric wing at Denver Children's Hospital was being held beneath bright sunshine. The nameplate of the building gleamed with the words Charles Hayes Intensive Care Unit. My $75 million had finally been placed where it belonged. It was no longer a target for the greed of an ungrateful son. It had become advanced medical equipment, medicine, life, and smiles for thousands of innocent children. The money that others sought through cruelty had become hope for future generations. As I watched the children playing, I smiled softly. Life is fair in its own way. Trust is sacred, but blind trust can destroy you. Choose carefully who deserves your legacy. Never allow false devotion to cloud your judgment, and always have your own safeguard against the unexpected turns of life. Thank you for joining Dad's Real-Life Revenge. Don't forget to share your story in the comments and subscribe so you won't miss the next hard-earned lesson. I'll see you in the next video. I walked slowly across the hospital grounds. The laughter of children echoed around me. The afternoon breeze drifted gently through the air, carrying with it freedom and complete peace of mind. The ordeal was over, but my legacy would live on forever.